Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Lending Leaders. We have a great guest today, Coby Hakalir, Vice President of Mortgage Banking and Ancillary Services at T360. Coby, thanks so much for joining. I know you're a podcast pro, so it's always a lot of fun when you get to be on the other side of things, getting peppered with questions for a little.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and love raising expectations right at the beginning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. This better be the best podcast we have ever recorded. So
let's nail it.
Let's go. Great. So, tell us a little bit about how you got into the mortgage industry and T360, especially.
Yeah, we'll do our best to keep that brief. My mom actually became a mortgage broker. I think it was 1985 or 86, somewhere in there. And shortly after, when I was about 11 or 12, in exchange for her buying me dinner at the deli across the street, I'd go to her office after school and help her package up files that were being shipped to the FHA processing center in Atlanta. This was back in New York, and all the files on the East Coast went to Atlanta. And so I spent some time packaging up FHA loans for processing. And, I kind of grew up around the mortgage industry before even before I even owned a house. I was writing mortgages for people. And I finally started as a broker in my own right. I think I was 18, maybe I just turned 19. Worked my way up through sales and worked my way up into leadership. And that's where I kind of found my calling. I discovered that I really enjoyed helping other people, guiding, mentoring. I did a lot of work with real estate associations because I saw that as not only an entree into getting more business, but I always admired how the realtors were advocating for their people. I loved what the NAR was doing and how that filtered down into the state and local associations. Continued on my path, and as I was thinking about how to impact the industry from a broader perspective, the consulting world seemed to make a lot more sense to me, and it seemed to be the next phase of where I wanted to be. And happenstance through a friend, I found T360. T360 had been primarily focused on residential real estate brokerage for the previous 25 years or so, and a leader and strategic advisory in that vein. And they realized that the lending world and the real estate world were becoming one, and that bridges were being built all over the place. And so while I was looking for a way to impact the industry, they were looking for someone to help them build those bridges. And we met at the right time. The universe brought us together, as they say. And I joined them officially last September, the day after my birthday. And it's been a wonderful experience. And I've gotten to meet so many incredible people within the organization and new people outside of the organization in this role of kind of being this industry advocate for mortgage.
Great. Like you said, kept it brief. I really like the how concise you are there. And also, I think we talked about this before, but I had a similar path to the industry where I was actually moving the boxes of files that my family's title company had to keep in storage for 5 years. So it's a lot of people started in the industry moving paper around one way or another.
It's true.
Funny how we go from that to social media.
Yeah, there are so many of us out there. It's really incredible. And I often think we should have our own group, just kind of either our own LinkedIn group or Facebook group of children of the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see how many of us raise kids into that industry. I know we all say we probably won't, but I guarantee you a lot of us will.
Well, you're saying your daughter's 22. What's her perception of the mortgage industry too, which actually gets into one of our talking points.
She didn't do any of my older daughter didn't do any of the grunt work that I did when I was younger. There's just no paperwork these days, right, for her to help with. So it's a little bit different. I feel like that's almost a loss, right? It's harder to get younger people, and it's one of the things I talk about all the time is getting younger people into the industry. She wants to be a chef. She really doesn't want any part of this business. But I have a feeling that might change when she discovers how difficult the world of culinary arts are, and she may come back to it. We'll see.
To be full circle, I've talked to a lot of folks who were working in a restaurant or a bar come early 2000s, and had a customer who was a mortgage banker, who was a mortgage loan officer, doing really well, and 20 years later they got pulled into the industry, and that's why they're there. So you never know.
Yeah, I love this business, and I would love for all my kids to be a part of it, but I want them to pursue their dreams first. My my dream was not to be in the mortgage business. It was to play, one of the corner outfield spots at Yankee Stadium. That didn't work out. This has been a great fallback.
Yeah, fair enough. My dream was to be president. So running a business was as close as I'm probably going to get.
You can still do that.
Isn't a bad thing.
My days.
I don't have enough hair for that. It's among other things. I don't have the hair for that. So, but yeah, probably. It's okay. We all have to kind of figure out where we end up.
We all adjust.
I was like to say 10-year-old Jim wouldn't be too upset. So,
yeah.
But
you do pull off the no hair really well. I do like it. It's a good look on you.
Thank you. It was a COVID thing.
Nice. I like it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think you could pull it off.
Well, maybe we'll see one day.
The beard, the facial hair helps, but
we'll
in
come
any
back
case,
to it in a few years.
Yeah, fair enough. I just kind of had to beat Father Time with that one. So, one of the things you mentioned in your T360 Trends report was factors in the housing market. One that really jumped out to me was consumer perception. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, of how companies really should be thinking about that right now?
Yeah, so to touch on that, what we talked about was that how, we always use the housing supply months, right? Months of supply as the benchmark for whether we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. And really, that's kind of a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. If you want a leading indicator, you got to really look at something like mortgage applications, right? Because that's somebody starting the process. But we look at that to determine whether we're in a seller market or a buyer market. What we really need to be doing in this market is differentiating between buyer demand and buyer desire. Right. And so buyer desire, I think, is always there. There's always the impetus, the desire for people to buy homes, right? People need a place to live. We've done a pretty good job of selling home ownership as the American dream, even though we've not done a good job of delivering on that dream, right? Yeah. The average age of the homeowner has gone from 27 in 1975 to almost 38 now. So in 50 years, we've lost 10 years, right? So that's not a good job of delivering that dream. But buyer desire is there. Buyer demand may not be when it comes to things like not knowing where we are going to be with the economic policies in place, where interest rates are going. Am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to afford a home with the price of groceries and trade and goods rising? So I think we have to differentiate. And I think in the mortgage business, our responsibility to those buyers is to understand that demand and desire may have a gap. Right. And so we need to address that by being mentors to our customers, by guiding our customers, by being trusted advisors is the buzzword. But what that really means is understanding what their needs are and what their perceptions of the market are versus, what the reality is. Right. And we always have that gap also between perception and reality, especially for people who may buy 3 or 4 homes throughout their entire lifetime and aren't immersed in mortgage the way we are.
Right. Or the perception of people, like myself, I'm 38 now. I've bought 2 homes. I know a lot of folks who've gone through the process around my age. We were graduating college during the Great Recession, losing job offers, seeing things happen to the market, all issues there. That really shapes our perception of the industry. And when I bought my first home about 3 years ago, we got an adjustable rate mortgage. I was familiar with it. I had a 5-year term. Was very confident we'd either move or refi in that time, and we did. But I have friends who have advanced degrees in finance, and we're like, why are you getting an adjustable rate? That doesn't make sense. Are you sure? Those are risky. Like, there's no understanding of kind of the options out there, and some options that can really bridge that kind of desire to demand gap.
Yeah, there's a yin and yang to buyer education these days. Yeah. And the yin, the positive is that they are more educated than they were when I was the same age, right? And didn't have access to the same information.
Right.
The negative side of that, the downside, is that they have access to a lot of information, and a lot of that information is misinformation or just sensationalist news stories that the media publishes that don't necessarily reflect reality.
And why do you think a lot of the mortgage industry doesn't educate in that way, right? Is it an age gap? Is it laziness? Is it just, being too busy with the easy files? Like,
D all of the above, right?
Yeah.
I think we have an issue in that we have an aging loan officer population. And that gap between the age of the average loan officer and the age of the average home buyer, that's expanding. And when that expands, that means people are not necessarily talking the same languages or communicating the words that another person is going to hear. And that's a super important thing that I think loan officers often don't realize is, I'm saying the words that make sense to me. Is this landing? Is this resonating with the consumer? And so, I think there's elements of laziness, and I think there's always the low-hanging fruit, right? I want the easiest deal. But I think overall, there's probably a communication gap gap that's spurred by the fact that we have 55-year-old loan officers and 35-year-old buyers, and we may not be speaking the same language. I know for a fact, I have an 11-year-old at home. We were talking about our kids before we started. I have an 11-year-old at home. I know for a fact that a lot of what I say, she has no idea what I'm talking about, even though I feel like I communicate pretty well. But does she hearing what I'm communicating? Oftentimes no, because I'm not speaking her language.
Right. And does she feel the same way when she's speaking to you, right? Have 11-year-olds speak, right? Like, yeah. So that's an interesting, and it kind of gets into one of the items I wanted to ask you too is on LinkedIn, you're incredibly active and you highlight gratitude a lot. So how is that something that can help with this, right? Instead of talking about in the weeds and the mortgage items, how is highlighting gratitude and changing the way that us as mortgage professionals present ourselves could help with that gap?
Yeah, so I think you're asking two different questions there, but maybe two parts of a question. But from a gratitude standpoint, I've been lucky. I've had two really great mentors throughout my career. One of them hired me when I was 22 years old. I still talk to him, almost every week, refer customers to him. He's still, he's managing, but he's still doing loans. And, he's someone that, so I think from a gratitude standpoint, I have a lot of gratitude towards the people in this business that helped me along. I've had two mentors, but I've had hundreds of people that I've learned from. And so I have tremendous gratitude for that. I have gratitude for the customers that have trusted me along the way when I was still originating loans, for the loan officers that I've recruited that have come along with me, and now for the clients in the mortgage industry that are working with me on a consulting basis. And so I think practicing gratitude gives you that perspective. It humbles you, right? It makes you think, all right, maybe I don't know everything and there's still a lot to learn. And I think applying that to your second part of your question, applying that to our interaction with customers, I think is very meaningful because it gives us the ability to empathize that those customers may be struggling with trying to understand the process. And we have to kind of humble ourselves a little bit and say, okay, they may not be understanding, they may not be getting what we're doing. We have to remember they do this 3, 4, 5 times max, right, in a lifetime. And we have to approach it that way. And I think that opens up the possibility for a lot deeper and greater success in communications.
And what I'm hearing there too is just from the gratitude, it's almost a desire to pay it forward, right? Of, hey, there were times I was asking stupid questions and had to learn about things, right? And now I get to be the person to teach the next generation and the people asking me things. So there's a humility to it that I really appreciate in your answer.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, paying it forward is probably what guides me in this business.
Yeah. No, I feel the same. I mean, I view that from a mentoring perspective as someone who's run a business and grown a business. I try to do that with folks who are kind of on that same path right now. And you learn so much in doing so too, I think. And that's something that I hope mortgage professionals can see is like in mentoring people and educating the consumer, you then learn these concepts better because you have to in order to explain them, especially to explain them to the new generations.
100%. And you mentioned me being active on LinkedIn. That's one of the reasons I am active on LinkedIn. I learn a ton. I post a lot, but I learn a ton, not just from my peers and colleagues who are posting, but from the people who engage with my posts. I learn because a lot of times they'll correct me or they'll have a little bit of a different perspective. And I appreciate that. I love it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that when I was going through the whole buying process this past fall. I was very surprised that childcare, daycare payments weren't included in our debt, in our DTI. Right. Obviously, they're not long-term debt, but 5-6 years, and they're combined, they're pretty much the same price as our mortgage right now. So I was surprised that wasn't included. And I had a lot of back and forth with loan officers kind of arguing both sides of it. So it's a fun place to have that type of healthy and mostly productive discussion.
Yeah. On the one hand, I would say don't give anyone any ideas. I do think you're 100% right. We do look at the wrong things often. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just important as a mortgage professional to realize that when you're working with someone, is just because it's not in the DTI ratio, it's probably an important part of their budget for the next few years if they have young kids.
Certainly.
Like I said, we're both professionals at this time, going by fast. So let me ask you the question we like to wrap up with here. Lodestar, we celebrate folks. A Lodestar is a guiding light. So what gets you up and going and working in this industry, day after day, after being in it for a while?
So one of the things we all had we have our COVID stories, right? We have our things that we did during COVID that we probably would never have done in normal life. For me, because everything was shut down and I was living in a new area at the time, I had just moved to California. The only thing open was my local volunteer fire department, and so I joined. and
Mhm.
became a firefighter and EMT at the department. That summer, or the summer after, I should say, we had one of the worst wildfire seasons in California. And I
Mhm.
actually worked on many of those wildfires through the
Oh,
summer
wow.
of 2021. We had a 1 million acre fire that was within 3 or 4 miles
Mhm.
of our front door. And that summer, I learned so much about the camaraderie of working on a fire crew,
Mhm.
working in a fire battalion, working in a fire division, and it was
Mhm.
this entire community of 5,000 firefighters working on that one fire. And I saw how everybody was pulling for one another, no matter what
Mhm.
city you were from, no matter what part of California, no matter what
Yeah.
part of the world. We had firefighters from all over the world come and help us.
Mhm.
And every day I try every day to take that brotherhood and that camaraderie and apply it to the mortgage industry, because I
Mhm.
feel like there's so much to be gained by all of
Yeah.
us pulling for the same thing. Really it's the customer, but pulling for the same thing, which is a
Right.
success, and a rising what's the word, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I kind
Yeah.
of think
Yeah.
that it's our responsibility to really be on the lookout. We're a small community. We're not huge in
Yeah.
mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And so my lodestar is to take the lessons I learned from the fire service and apply
Yeah.
them every day to the mortgage industry.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, we're all fighting the same fire, and that fire is complexity, consumer perception, uncertainty, all of those things that kind of go into, um, the challenges of getting someone into a house and getting someone a mortgage, right? We're all facing that together.
Yep. And
So,
anytime we spend fighting each other, super counterproductive.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kobe, I really appreciate your time. That was a great insight, and hope to chat again soon.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you
Okay.
for having me on.